Hello, welcome back, everybody. It's Aaron again. We're going to be looking at episode 15. This is How to Draw Eyes, part 2. So, in a second here, I'm going to be pulling out a comic book to just look at some references. Here we go. Of how they draw eyes for comics. Different artists draw them different ways. But I'm just showing you this here, real quick, to show you really don't need a lot of detail for the eye to end up looking good in a comic book. You can do a bunch of different styles. So that's kind of what we're going to do in this video. This is more of like a demonstration video instead of a how-to, but I'm including it in my series. So this quote here, I don't know who came up with it. We've all heard it. Eyes are the windows to the soul. That's why I'm doing episode 2 or part 2 of eyes, because it's important that we draw them right. When you draw a face, you know, your eyes automatically go to the eyes in the artwork without even knowing it. And so it's important that we get a good sense of how to draw eyes. And I think we could all use more practice. I know I can. And especially if you're learning, you got to really practice the basic fundamentals that I'm trying to teach here. So here I'm just mentioning, really try to practice your placement and get that right. So here I'm just drawing some of the basic socket shapes and getting it from a couple different angles. But I was originally going to be doing how to draw male eyes and how to draw female eyes, 2 different videos, but I realized that male eyes and female eyes are so similar that you really don't need separate. But I've had already planned to do 2 eye videos, and so I thought it would be a good idea to do another episode, do another one of these, because we're going to be actually show you some things in this video that I forgot in the last video. And then we're going to be, later in the video, we're going to be doing some stylized drawings. Styles that I normally don't like to draw. So just as an example. That note there just says, remember the eye sits in the center of the socket. Like I said, I'm gonna note it later, but I struggle with eyes so much. I always have. Just getting the placement right and getting it lined up correctly, and some people might not struggle with it, but I do. So I'm just drawing here another example of some eyes, using that method that I showed you in last episode, where you draw the sockets first, and it's a lot easier to line them up. And here I'm just pulling out my compass to check my measurements, to check my spacing, because I really struggle with spacing sometimes, and I'm just off sometimes. So I'm just fixing it. If I was doing like a finished piece that I was going to sell, or if it was a commission, absolutely I would measure. Make sure it's right. It's not wrong to measure and check your proportions. So I drew those eyes there for you to show you really how simple you can go with them. They don't need to be super detailed. Um, it just needs to look correct. And like I showed you in that comic book, they don't need to be detailed to look good. And when it's farther away, um, you can't see it anyways, the detail, when it's like farther away. I mentioned that later in a note. But at that note I just wrote up there says eyes can be many different styles. And like I said already, we're going to do a bunch of different styles in this video. And here I'm just drawing a couple female eyes. I don't think I really covered female eyes too heavily in the last video. So here I'm noticing I'm off. I'm a little wide on my spacing. I think I fix it. It's pretty wide. It's a little too wide. I don't know if I fix it or if I leave it. Yep, it looks like I'm gonna move it and move it over. I guess what I could have done, instead of moving it, what you can do if you realize that your spacing is off, instead of moving it, you could draw the eyes larger. Instead of erasing it and redrawing it and moving it over. But I guess in this case I decided to just move it instead of draw it bigger. So I think that's one of the hardest things, at least for me, to continually get right is proportions, and spacing and sizing. And there I just moved it again. It's tough, and I've been drawing a while now, and I still have a hard time with it. But the difference is once you draw for a while, the difference is you can start to spot your mistakes and you know how to fix them. That's the difference. It's not that you don't make mistakes, it's that you know how to fix them. And so I think eyes are one of the hardest things for me to draw, because they have to be perfectly spaced, perfectly aligned, to look good. It's very difficult, at least for me, to get it right. I spend a lot of time on eyes, making sure they look good. And I will pull out that compass and measure if I have to. Sometimes I'll have a bad day where I'm just not getting it, and I'll pull out the compass and I'll just measure it, and that'll make my life a lot easier. So here what I'm doing, I'm drawing a side view of an eye, like a little bit larger eye, but I'm drawing a side view because I realized in the last video I don't think I went over that. So a side view, what you can do is you can just draw like a triangular shape, and then as you see here I'm putting in the sphere of the eyeball. But I wanted to draw a profile view of an eye to show you what that looks like. And here I'm putting in the iris. I'm going to show you here in just a second. Oh, my computer's going off. Okay, so this is what I was going to talk about. When you're looking at the eye from directly on the side, the pupil is not exactly it's not at the edge of the iris. It's kind of it sits a little farther back. And I actually was looking at some reference photos the other day, and I noticed that, and I was like, oh, it sits farther back. It's not exactly on the edge. It's all these subtle little details that you don't realize are there until you just keep observing, and eventually you find them. Again, I think I could have done better probably on the iris shading. I think I maybe halfway gave up on that. Probably should have redone it, but yeah. So here I'm just saying the pupil of the eye is not directly on the edge of the iris. It sits farther back because um, our iris and everything is like a sphere. So it's almost like it's like a dome shape kind of thing. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I know a little bit of it, of the anatomy, but here's an eye from the side view. It looks kind of creepy. Just being kind of like that. Okay, so here what I'm drawing a very simplified profile view. And for a lot of, comic book art or whatever, this is really all you need. Just a few lines. So here I think I'm going to do a little bit more of a stylized angry eye sketch or something. But you notice I drew the brow first and then sketched in the other two eyes, and I'm doing that to show you how stylized you can go with your art. It doesn't have to be realistic or even semi-realistic. You can go cartoony, and we're gonna do more styles in a little bit. But this is something that I think everyone should practice when they're drawing eyes. Draw the sockets and draw them inside the socket. It's so much easier. Trying to line it up without any, guideline to work with, it's just way too hard. Why do that to yourself? So this guy on the bottom left there looks pretty angry. So here what I'm doing, I'm drawing another set of eyes. I ended up not really liking how these came out, but again, I'm just trying to do another pair of eyes and kind of change the style a little bit. I drew them rather small for how far away they are. So I end up moving it. See, I move it over to get it more accurate. This is one of the hardest parts of drawing for me, is getting the eyes spaced correctly and aligned right. I struggled for years with really not knowing how to fix my art when it was wrong. And I finally figured out how to fix it. And then now I have a way better understanding of how to make eyes look halfway decent. And but there's still a struggle. Like if you see there, I'm drawing a line over just to make sure it's lined up right. I use guidelines all the time for eyes. If they're not lined up right, they're gonna look bad. Like unless you're intentionally trying to make the eyes placed differently. Like maybe if you're drawing a weird zombie or something, maybe it would work for that. But for most drawings, the eyes are lined up fairly accurately. Some people actually, their eyes are not perfectly aligned right. Like, one eye might actually be lower than the other. So that's why likenesses are so hard to draw, because you have to really pay attention to the differences. And some people's eyes literally are different, are spaced differently. Like one might be higher than the other, or lower. and it does happen. So, but for the most part, people's eyes are aligned, at least from what I can tell. But I think I'm a little off here. I might move it, or maybe I leave it. I can't remember. It's okay sometimes to be a little bit off, as long as it's not like glaringly wrong. So what I did was I drew the whole circle through the eye, and then to get the placement right, and then I erased what I didn't need. So here I'm just trying to create a halfway decent female eye sketch. It was a little harder to draw this one because I can't move the paper, so I like to turn the paper so that I can rotate and get a good line with the movement of my wrist. But when the paper is taped down, it can be hard sometimes. So I was struggling with my line work on this one. And so, I mean, for all these examples, I'm not using reference. I'm just trying to come up with ideas in my head and kind of draw them out based on the rules that I know about drawing eyes and the rules that we've gone over already. So putting some eyelashes on her, looks like. I think those eyes are still too far apart, but it still looks okay. But I'm definitely, as you can see, drawing those crosshairs to get the pupils lined up. When the pupils are not aligned, it looks really bad. I used to struggle with that all the time, and when they're not lined up right, it looks horrible. I don't know why, it just does. I mean, obviously, unless you're intentionally trying to draw a character that's like, hasn't had any sleep in a week and his eyes are cross-eyed or something, but I think what I did there was I didn't really like the way I was shading the iris, so I took it out. There's other ways to shade the iris too. I didn't really go over any of those, but you don't even have to draw the detail. You can just shade like half of it and leave the other half basically empty. I learned a lot of techniques from Mark Crilley, the grandfather of YouTube drawing videos. Mark Crilley was the first person to have a drawing video on YouTube, I believe, back in 2006 or 2007. But Mark has a video on his channel of like 100 different ways to draw eyes. Crazy. So I took a little bit of inspiration from that. I didn't copy any of his, but I just remembered that he did that video, and I said I want to do, some more eyes and practice a little bit more and show you what you can do. So now here what I'm doing is I'm changing the expression just by changing how open the eye is, how open the eyelid is. Just changing it just a little bit. and that completely changes the way it looks. But again, this isn't, all of these examples are made up. Okay, so I think here what I'm doing is I was putting my contacts in the other day, and I noticed what the eye looks like when it's extremely like wide open. 'Cause you have to kind of spread your eyelids apart to put your contacts in, and so I noticed what it looked like when it was really wide, and so here I'm trying to draw that from memory. I don't know if I did it perfectly, but looks okay, I guess. Okay, so I think here what I'm doing is I'm gonna do an example of a 3/4 view. I didn't do a great job with these eyes. I should have redone them. I think what I was trying to do is put too much detail in a small space, and I didn't end up getting them to look too great. I mean, they look okay here with the line work, but I don't know. Just I should have redone these. Could have gotten them to look a little better. Okay, so I'm deciding I want to show you how to change the direction of your eye. Like if you want it to be looking a certain direction, you just change the spot where the iris is, and that'll make it look like it's looking somewhere else, or it'll make the eyes look like they're looking somewhere else. Yeah, I don't like this example. I should have redone it. Anyway, can't like everything you draw, right? But with the 3/4 view, you really got to be careful of it because the eye ends up closer to the nose in a 3/4 view, and it's hard because when you look at it straight on, it's not really that close. But in a 3/4 view, everything is shortened. That's why it's the foreshortening. Everything is shortened, so you have to draw everything in a smaller area. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm starting to show you how you can go for some different styles. And we're going to do more examples after this one, but just kind of making this up and I'm seeing what happens. I don't know. I was like, what would have happened if they were like really, really square? Just a different style. I don't know. But you can really start stylizing them once you know the rules. So I'm putting in the pupils, or the irises, and now the pupils. And then I figured, maybe his eyebrows are like really, really thin. And all his eyebrows are is like a line or something. I don't know, just trying to think and come up with something. Putting in the eyelash line. Yeah, here, and I said that already. You can really start stylizing once you know the rules. Okay, so now I think this is the last page. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to do some examples of different styles for you to show you how you can make completely different styles of art if you know the basic rules. You can just completely change the style and it could still look halfway decent. Now, so this first example, I'm going for like really, really cartoony, almost like emoji style art, and I don't really like drawing in this kind of a really cartoony style. Some people do, but I did it. I'm doing it to show you that you can. Everyone asks, "Oh my gosh, well, how do I find my style? How do I find my style?" Well, I always say, don't worry about that. Who cares? Just focus on being the best artist you can possibly be. Because I did this for a reason. I'm showing you that anyone can draw multiple different styles. So here I'm noticing the eye's a little bit off. I'm fixing it. And it's still kind of off, but that's what everybody complains. Oh, I don't know how to draw in my style. I don't know what my style is. Well, I just say, you know what? Just try to be the best artist you can be and learn how to draw semi-realism, I would say, and then after that you can draw whatever you want. That's what I would say. Just try to learn how to draw things correctly, and then you can start messing with it later and create your own style from that. But everybody complains about style instead of practicing how to be a better artist overall, all around. I want to be a well-rounded artist. I don't care what the style is. And I'm doing this to show you I can draw multiple styles. I just choose not to. Because I just don't really like certain types of art. Or I don't, not that I don't like it, I just would rather draw like more comic style. Is what I meant to say. I'd rather draw a semi-realistic style of art. But here are three completely different styles, and in my opinion, it's actually harder to draw very, very cartoony work because your line work has to be perfect to look good. So as you can see, these eyes that I'm drawing are completely different styles of art. They're completely different styles, but they're all eyes and they all look like eyes and they all read as eyes. So the third one's going to be like a little bit more of a comic style. This is a lot closer to the way I would probably draw it if I was drawing a closer shot, like a close-up shot. And remember, when you're doing these lessons and you're practicing, just take your time. Like, you're not under a deadline, so just take your time and practice. And these 3 examples, I spent more time on these to make them as nice as I could, to show you the possibilities of drawing in different styles. Even if you don't think you can draw in a different style, I bet you could. If you've practiced long enough, you can change your style. So what I'm doing is I just kind of broke up the line for the iris. I thought it would look maybe a little better, different. So in here, what I did is I made the irises square and the pupils square instead of round. I just thought could look interesting, and I think it came out nice. I'm trying to go for like a not amused character. Like, his eyes are just like, half open, because he's either tired or not amused. And then this third one, getting it laid in here. Doing my cross sections for the iris and the pupil. I'm telling you, not lining up the pupil correctly, I struggled with that for so long, for so many years, and I hated drawing eyes because I just could never get it right. It was just so frustrating. And I'm a lot better at it now than I was. But I mean, this would be maybe the style that I would draw in if I was doing a closer up, comic panel or something like that. Maybe. I mean, I might even try to go a little bit more realistic with my comic panels, but this is cartoony, but it's realistic enough. You can tell that it's not it's not as cartoony as the other 2 examples. So my notes over on the right-hand side are mentioning, make sure you check the alignment of your eyes. Make sure they're in line with each other. Make sure the spacing is right. Or I say keep checking your eye distances. And then the next note there just says it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect every time. That's something I struggle with. I'm a perfectionist when it comes to my art. I really work hard to make the best art I can make, and I try to do something really nice every time I draw. And so I'm definitely a perfectionist when it comes to the artwork that I make. Again, you don't have to draw it perfect every single time. Just do a lot of drawings instead of trying to make every single drawing perfect. I would say the other thing I would say, especially with your eyes, is finish your drawings, even if it's not amazing. Finish it anyway and move on to the next one. So I spent more time on these to try to make them nice, to show you the 3 different styles of art, of eyes. 3 different styles of eyes. Very cartoony, pretty cartoony and less cartoony. So yeah, again, I have a hard time with eyes. Keep practicing, and eventually they'll get easier. You have to draw a lot of them, and this is another reason why I did part 2 of eyes, because they're very important to get right. And yeah, so keep drawing eyes, keep practicing. And here I'm writing, I created 3 different styles of eyes to show you, if you know the rules, you can change them around and start playing around and mess around with them and have a little bit more fun. And you can experiment and have more fun with it. So anyway, that's going to be it for episode 15, How to Draw Eyes Part 2. Thanks for watching. I hope you subscribe and like and share the video with your friends if you think it might help them. And thanks for coming back again to watch my content, and I'll see you in the next one.